So today I am coming to talk to you about an issue that I have addressed in another video. I believe it was one of the first few videos I ever posted. Um, if you have a preemie, you probably know the prevalence of reflux. A lot of people, I don't think, understand how common it is with preemies to have reflux. If you are coming to watch this video looking for advice about maybe things that might help your baby with reflux, I'm just going to warn you right now that this video is not going to contain helpful information. Maybe in a sense, because I'm going to talk about things that I've tried, but however, none of them have worked really well for me or for my baby, I should say. Really, this is more of a rant, a complaint. This might be helpful because maybe you're having a really hard time with your little one's reflux and you might feel like I do, and maybe this video will help with showing solidarity, and so you understand that you're not alone in this. But I am going to talk about it in a way that is more about how we struggle rather than how to fix it. So, my baby was born at 26 weeks gestation. She is now 13 months actual, 10 months adjusted. And we've been struggling with reflux since she was still in the NICU. So, to describe her reflux and kind of a little bit about our background with it, in the NICU, she did have necrotizing enterocolitis. So, she did not need surgery, but having a situation like that can sometimes impact how babies digest food and their motility in general. So that kind of set her up maybe to have a little bit harder of a time with reflux than some other babies. But it still is, even if they don't have something like necrotizing enterocolitis, and even if they're not as early as a 26-weeker, maybe they were like a 33-weeker, it's not necessarily going to be that, oh, they don't have reflux if they're 33-weekers or 34-weekers. Some babies are full term and they still have bad problems with reflux. So Gemma started before she even started eating orally. She started having episodes of bradycardia during feedings. Probably, well, she had the neck right as she turned 29 weeks gestation. She was almost 3 weeks old when that happened. The whole situation, she was off feeds for less than a week, and then they put her back on feeds and just gradually increased her bolus feeds up just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more till they could get her off her TPN. And then when they got her off her TPN and they were on full NG feeds, they went up until they got to the appropriate number of calories for her weight. And so I want to say she was probably about 31-ish weeks before that happened. And we got to a point where she was just having like all these episodes of bradycardia, even in between feeds, but more so during and right after. And they said, well, this looks like reflux. And if it is, it's just going to get worse. So right now, we're not super concerned with the bradycardia because, yeah, we stimulate her and she bounces back out of it, but she needs to eat. So there's no way to fix that. By the time she was 34 weeks, she began oral feeds. She was on fortified breast milk all this time. And she would accept bottles, but she continued to have these issues with lots of not spit up, but episodes of bradycardia during and after feeds. So they explained to me that that can be silent reflux. So basically, the milk is coming up their esophagus, but not out their mouth. So you can't visibly tell that they're having reflux. They're not actually like puking it out, but they're holding their breath because that burning sensation in their esophagus is uncomfortable. So they told me that to them, it looked like definitely some silent reflux. They did not do a swallow study or anything to see if she was aspirating because they didn't see any signs of that. She didn't develop pneumonia or anything like that. So they said for right now, as long as she's eating, we're just going to keep feeding her. She's still on the monitors. She's still in the hospital. She still has a ways to go because she wasn't accepting all her bottles orally yet. So they said, hopefully it gets worse before it gets better, and hopefully it gets better by the time, you go home. And then if she's not having issues with the reflux anymore, then that's great. But time will tell. So after a few more weeks of her oral feeds, with breast milk, fortified breast milk, she would sometimes go for several days without having any episodes, and she was taking more and more by bottle, but still needed the NG for a little bit. She wasn't really quite um, taking all of it, by bottle. So by around 37 weeks gestation, she, even without having episodes of bradycardia, she randomly just started to act like she didn't want to eat. She didn't want to take her bottles anymore. She was becoming what they considered orally averted. She wouldn't even let them put a pacifier in her mouth anymore, and she always took a pacifier. So there was one day, and I wasn't there. They told me that they had offered her a pacifier, and she gagged and didn't want it. And they tried giving her the bottle. She gagged and she didn't want it. So then they tried what we had discussed. At this point, they had put her on some reflux medication, and we actually didn't see any bradycardia for a while. She was on this reflux medication. So I thought it was going well until this day that she didn't want to eat. And then the backup thing that we had discussed, if the reflux medication, at the time it was Prilosec she was taking, what we had discussed was another thing that they could try, which was switching her over to formula. It's called Enfamil AR. It's added rice formula. So it is a dairy-based formula, but it has rice added, so it makes it thick. And it's for reflux, frequent spit up, because it helps stay down better. The rice is heavier, it's thicker, feels better going down, usually stays down in the stomach better. So we had discussed it before, so I guess they just assumed that I was okay with them giving her a bottle of it, because they didn't call and ask me if they could, but they just randomly told me, hey, she wouldn't eat for us. And so we gave her a bottle of the Enfamil AR, and she drank the whole thing. And I was kind of irritated that they didn't ask if they could give it to her. I guess, like I said, we had talked about it before, so I guess they assumed that that was my permission right there. And I wasn't really, really mad. I was just a little irritated that they didn't really ask me in that moment whether or not it was okay. So she took the whole bottle of AR, and they were like, listen, it's stayed down, but we can't give her the reflux medication anymore, because the reflux medication is not going, it's not gonna, she won't have the stomach acid, because it was like a stomach acid inhibitor kind of thing. So they were like, she needs the stomach acid to break down the AR formula, the rice in the AR formula. So they were like, we're gonna stop giving her the reflux medication and just put her on the AR. So I'm like, whatever, for right now, fine. They were like, just keep pumping, because eventually she'll probably be able to take breast milk again. So I was hoping to eventually exclusively breastfeed like I did with my other babies, and I just was like, fine, I'll just keep pumping. I kept pumping, and still for the next few weeks, she would actually sometimes outright spit up, but still, now that they took her off the reflux medication, she was having more episodes of bradycardia, and I was getting really upset because she was coming up on 40 weeks gestation, and I was expecting, she was fine. She was even taking all her feeds orally. She got off her NG. She got her NG out when she was almost 39 weeks gestation. I was taking all her bottles orally, but she was still having these episodes of bradycardia. And they were like, until she has one for at least 5 days, without it being feeding related, she can't go home. And if it's not during or after a feed, if it's like in between feeds, like more than an hour after a feed, it has to be more than 7 days before she can go home. If she has an episode of bradycardia, it puts her back on the watch for another 5 to 7 days, depending on the reason. So I was really having a hard time with them, like thinking to myself, this is reflux. It's not going to just like magically go away. Like what's the chance that she's going to have an episode of bradycardia at home? If she's having reflux, she could have reflux at home. She could go 5 or 6 days and not have one here, and then go home and have one. So I was really panicked, but she went home at 40 weeks and 6 days, so almost 41 weeks. So 6 days adjusted. I brought her home on the AR formula only. I was still pumping at the time, but I had a really hard time with continuing to pump because of having 5 kids to take care of, one of them being a preemie. Because of her reflux, her feeding took a long time. We had to take a lot of breaks. Then I had to hold her upright and not move her around because otherwise she'd puke if I moved her around. So after she ate, I'd have to sit there and hold her on the couch. I was struggling to pump and to wash the bottles and wash the pump hearts and measure her medications and mix the formula. I mean, it was just a lot to take care of. So I ended up pumping for a couple more months, but the amount of time I could spend pumping just decreased. Sometimes I could only do it for 5 or 10 minutes, and sometimes it was only 2 or 3 times a day rather than 4 to 6 times a day or more. And my supply was great, but it just went down, down, down. And I just got to a point where she couldn't handle the breast milk. And I'm like, I'm going to stop. I don't know if she'll ever even be able to take this. So I was told when she went home that she'll outgrow it. She'll outgrow it. She'll outgrow it. Well, I'm to the point now, like, they were like, oh, well, a lot of babies by the time they're like 2 or 3 months adjusted, they outgrow it. So I was hoping that that time would come, and it didn't. And since she got home, she was visibly throwing up, not just having bradycardia, but like visibly vomiting at least 2 or 3 times a day, a lot of times 4 or 5 times a day. And she was having like 6 or 7 bottles a day. So I'm like, all right, this is not good. She's throwing up so much, and she always struggled with weight gain. So I periodically tried to give her the breast milk, thinking, well, maybe that'll help actually. Maybe if she'll take it, maybe the AR formula is what's bothering her stomach. But she threw up either way. So for a little while, I was giving her some breast milk anyway, and then I finally stopped because I'm like, well, if she's going to throw that up, she's going to throw this up, she's going to throw up. Like, why waste the breast milk if she's just going to throw it up anyway? So I was like thinking I can save it for later on when she's a little older and she outgrows her reflux. Outgrows when she gets older. That's really funny to me now in retrospect that I thought I would hope that one day she was going to outgrow it. So they told me, oh yeah, 2 or 3 months adjusted, she'll probably outgrow it. Oh, she's 3 months old, she's still throwing up. Oh, don't worry. When she starts purees and other food, she'll stop throwing up. So she gets to, 6 months adjusted. She's still throwing up. They're like, okay, try the purees. Well, she's so orally averted from all the puking that she's done that like she doesn't even like want to try a lot of different kinds of purees. And a lot of them, I just touch it to her lip and without her even getting any like really like a bite of it in her mouth, just touching the puree to her lip. It doesn't matter if it's sweet. It doesn't matter what it is. A lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times she'll gag and puke and whatever's left in her stomach comes out. And I'm like, this is stupid. Like, why am I even trying to feed her if she's going to throw up what I struggled to get her to drink anyway? So then they were like, oh, well, when she starts sitting up and crawling and she has better core strength, it'll go away. So they keep on giving me this hope that eventually she's going to outgrow it. And like, oh, when this happens, then she'll outgrow it. So long story short, shorter, I should say, she ends up on reflux medication. She sees a new GI doctor because her first GI doctor didn't want to medicate her. He's like, well, she's gaining weight. She doesn't need medication. Didn't like that guy. He was not helpful. So she saw a new GI doctor. He put her on a medication and it helped, but it decreased her throwing up to maybe once or twice a day rather than, 4 or 5 times a day. So then several months later, he added in a second medication. So she's on Prevacid and Zantac. So for the last like 3 months, she's been on both of those. And we've had to adjust it based on her weight, give her a higher dose. And he's like, oh, she's going to outgrow this. She's doing okay. Just keep on feeding her. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Can we do a swallow study? Can we do an upper GI x-ray, a gastric emptying study? Like, can we do something? And he's like, no, I don't see signs of problems with that. I just see reflux. And I'm thinking, like, this is really a horrible thing for that both of us are going through, that she has to be throwing up all the time. And just because she's gaining weight, you're using that as the measurement that she doesn't need help, like she doesn't need any intervention. So now it's to the point where, she's 10 months old adjusted. She is supposed to be eating some table food. She's supposed to be eating purees at least once or twice a day. Supposed to be trying food off, our plates, mashed up kind of stuff that is easy to swallow, to mash up in her gums. She's got a couple teeth, but practicing with puffs, stuff like that. And she's so sensitive to all that stuff, so orally averted, that it's like almost impossible for me and very discouraging for me to try to even feed her like any of this food, even to just practice or to try it out and see how it goes. Because a lot of times I struggle to get her to take a bottle. And if I wait an hour or whatever later, thinking, oh, her bottle will be digested by now, I can try to feed her. Because that way, in case she throws up, she's not going to throw up anything of substance. I mean, she hasn't eaten in a while. I'll wait an hour and a half sometimes after she eats, has her bottle, and then try to give her some kind of food. And she gags and she throws up anyway. And she throws up a large amount. And I'm like, how's that still all in her stomach after all this time? So the GI doctor, we've seen him a few times. The new one, he's like the guy, and he still is like not being very helpful. He just gave her meds and said, oh yeah, she's gaining weight, so don't worry about it. I feel like there's nobody in my corner. So like her nutrition therapist keeps telling me things that we can try, to offer her to try to be more successful with table feeding. And I'm making this video today because she told me, well, maybe if you don't give it to her, you just let her play with the food and she gets it in her mouth. Like a lot of times babies, it's different when they put it in their mouths themselves than it is when you put it in their mouth. So just this morning I attempted that. I put her in the high chair. I took all her clothes off her in case she got food all over herself or she threw up or whatever. I put a towel under her so the high chair wouldn't get all gross. And I literally just made her a little bowl with some rice cereal mixed with formula and a little bit of fruit, kind of thinned it out a little bit. I put it in there. I put a spoon and I put a little like dippy like nub spoon thingy in there too. So she could kind of play with those things. Before she even ate it, just the smell of it in front of her face, she started gagging and she threw up. Like I had given her only her reflux medication with a tiny bit of formula because I have to mix it. She won't take it otherwise. She literally threw up what I gave her 20 minutes before that, before she even got it in her mouth. She didn't even get the food in her mouth, just the smell of it. She was like, and threw up. I was incredulous when this happened. So then she's sitting there and she doesn't even want to put anything in her mouth because she knows it's food. And she got it all over herself. It was all over everything. She was holding the spoon. She's holding the bowl. It's everywhere. And like, she is continuing to like gag and like throw up little bits because there's hardly anything in her stomach. This was like first thing in the morning. And normally she puts everything in her mouth. Like you would think she'd put the spoon in her mouth. She'd lick the bowl. She would put the little nub thing in her mouth. She knew there was food on it. She would not even put it in her mouth, like at all. I was taking her hand, like, here, try, like this. And she was like, crying. She wouldn't even let me put it in her mouth. And I'm thinking, okay, this kid is 10 months adjusted, 13 months actual, and she is approaching the time when she's supposed to be like drinking milk and like eating food. And I just feel like it's not going to happen. And I cry all the time when I watch her puke. I'm like, I feel so helpless. I feel like I can't like fix it. And people are like, maybe she needs to be dairy free, or maybe she needs this or that, like trying to offer suggestions. I'm not pumping anymore. I'm not producing milk. So I can't just like eliminate dairy from my diet and then give her my milk and it'll be dairy free. And I've tried dairy free formula, but she's so orally averted that she's so picky. She wouldn't even drink the other kind of formula I try to offer her. She wants what she's familiar with. So that's my rant. And I feel very, like I said, very discouraged and very like nobody's in my corner. We are going to be seeing a food therapist pretty soon for feeding therapy to see if we can move forward with that eventually. And I know people are like, it's not going to last forever. One day she's going to outgrow it. But I don't see it happening. And it's getting really frustrating because it's just been, she's been home now for 10 months. And I've been dealing with this for 10 months, hoping each month, each week, each day that it's going to end, and it doesn't seem like there's any end in sight. So if you are a mama who maybe has a baby with reflux and your baby is younger and people are telling you it's going to end when X, Y, and Z happen, know that might be true, but it also might not be true. And I'm really sorry to break that to you. I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but be realistic and understanding that just because other people have experiences that are one way, it doesn't mean you're going to have the same experience. And if your baby is like mine, 10 months old, 11 months old, adjusted, or maybe even older than that and still struggling with reflux, I hope you know that you're not alone. I certainly feel like I'm alone, and I know there are some of you out there that struggle with this too, with your baby. So I would appreciate it if you could comment and tell me if you're one of those people. It would be good to hear from you if your baby is 10, 11, 12 months old, adjusted, and still having a reflux, because I just need to have solidarity with some other people who get it, who understand how bad it is. I underestimated it. I never would have known that it was this bad, that the reflux could be this significant for this long. So that's it. That's what I had to say. Thanks for watching my video. We'll talk to you later. Bye.